You know what the most dangerous thing in America is, right? Nigga with a library card.
This is the Most Dangerous Thing in America podcast, a show in which we read books by black authors. And they're talked about by a black author, and you can listen if you are black or not black. That is okay. Back after a hiatus, had some stuff to attend to, but I am back. Name of the book this week is Son of the Storm by Suyi Davies Okungbowa, and we will be calling him Suyi because I'm not sure I pronounced the name correctly. So my apologies if I messed that up. But yeah, I actually finished this book 3 days ago. No, that's not true. I finished it on Tuesday, so that would have been like 5 days or 6 days ago. And yeah, hadn't read a fantasy novel in a while, and I had this one in my Kindle for probably like 6 months before actually getting around to it. So it was good to finally get around to it, and I enjoyed it. But yeah, okay, before we talk about how I enjoyed it, let's actually set the table here. What we're going to do is just give a little brief overview, and then we will talk about some things I like, and then that'll be it. It's going to be kind of a short one because it's fiction, you know. When it's fiction, it's always a little bit shorter on my end. All right, so the basic premise of the novel is that it takes place in this fictionalized universe, obviously, on the continent, which I just assume is Africa, but that's probably like not the case, but I'm going to go ahead and say it's the case, that it's just like a fictionalized... Actually, let's not do that. Well, I mean, what's the harm in it, you know? Because like George R.R. Martin, when he does his fantasy things, it's like a fictionalized Europe. So this is just fictionalized Africa. And there's a giant kingdom. So there's basically one giant kingdom called Basai. And then there's some islands. And then there's like a unincorporated area that the name is away from me right now. But it's unincorporated, and people there are like mixed race. So like Basai people are like pure black. And then the folks in the islands are like, they're basically mythological. Nobody really knows if they exist, and they're called yellow skins, and they have a bunch of different powers. And then there's the third place, which has like, you know, your Muggle bloods, as it were. And I think I can say that as a Muggle blood myself. So the main character in the book is one such Muggle blood, Danso. He's a jolly novitiate. So like, what that means is, for some reason, although he's of mixed blood, he managed to get into like the highest order of Basai society, you know, and it's kind of like being a high priest of Basai. So he gets to study and stuff and read and gets treated super well, and is from the highest caste and the one of the better wards. And so he has to wear his hair a certain way, but because you know, he's mixed, he can't even get cornrows correctly. That's what I took it to mean. And his intended, the person that he's married to, or going to get married to, her name is Ashimi. And she's also got a checkered past, which is like, you know, it's a bit weird that she's also a jolly JLI novitiate. And so they make a good match this way. And her mother is Nim, and she's a fixer and does stuff for people. That's part of the checkered past thing, right? And then another pretty important character is Danso's second, Zach. So that's like the beginning of the book, right? Like those three, and then, I mean, Zach's not really that important at the beginning, but he becomes more important. And then like Danso's family, Shimi's family, her mother, right? Okay. But so that's what's going on. And really there's not like a ton of like conflict between those people, other than the fact that Danso's just kind of a goof and got himself in trouble by reading a forbidden book and stuff like that. And he doesn't look the part, right? We already established that. And then on top of not looking the part, you know, he got this opportunity, but he still kind of is like constantly screwing up. And this really grinds Ashimi's gears, you know, so to speak. But that's like a minor thing, right? Like a girlfriend and a boyfriend being upset about something or whatever, fiance and and also a fiance, two fiancés being upset with each other. Pretty normal stuff, straightforward, not a big deal. What complicates things, what sets the book in motion, is the appearance of a yellow skin, and her name is Li Long. And the reason Danso's drawn to her is because his whole life he's been a different person, and he never found out about his mom or whatever. So he goes and helps this yellow skin, even though like he probably shouldn't. Like it's probably a bad idea according to the rules of the society, but he's just curious and he wants to do it. So he does, and that's what sets everything in motion. From there, bunch of stuff goes crazy. Now, there is an outside thing that also sets things in motion that would have happened regardless of Danso's choice. So things would have been a lot different in Basai regardless of what Danso did, but because Danso acted, things are a lot different in Basai. They're a lot different for Danso. They're a lot different for Ashimi. And so everything changes really quickly. And yeah, from there we go. Is it ruining? I don't think it's ruining. From there, because he chose to help this person, Li Long, something happens. I won't give away details. But him, that's Danso, Li Long, and Zach, they set out to like basically leave Basai. Now, it should be mentioned here that this is like a suicide mission. Like they're going to try to reach a place that has a treaty with Basai, but that's like the only place on the mainland that does. And then to do that, they have to go through a forest and all of this. And it's the classic fantasy type thing, where like they're out on the hero's journey basically, and they run into this obstacle and that obstacle and this obstacle. So that's, I would say, the bulk majority of the book is that. And along the way, Danso basically is this giving too much away? I don't think so. There's 3 books, right? So it wouldn't be giving too much away. Along the way, Danso figures out that he has powers. And it might be, not just him that has powers, but other people too. So the thing that allows people in the book to use magic, which is only really wielded by yellowskins, is Eber. Eber is this substance that's naturally occurring, that they use it and harness it, and it gives them the ability to do different things, magical type things. And he manages to do this accidentally. And so that's like part of the journey. And then after that, I don't think I can give away. That's the last thing I'll give away is Zach, Li Long, and Danso, traveling to the land where Danso's mother comes from, and where a lot of other mixed race people are, and him trying to find himself, and then also like discovering that he has superpowers basically. But not because of his mother, or maybe because of his mother. We don't fully get all of the details 100% because there's a lot going on. And then I would say that's probably like 2/3 of the book, so that's good, right? We don't need to go past that. So then, just things that I like. I think that the forest thing I mentioned earlier, classic fantasy stuff. Them going to the forest really reminded me of what is it? I always mess this up. Red leopard, black wolf, red leopard. I can't remember. But they go through a forest in that book too, so that reminded me of that. I really liked that. I thought it was just like it didn't remind me of it, and I thought like, oh man, this is cliche or something. I thought like I like the concept of mythical African beasts in a forest, and so I was on board. And to that point, there's a giant bat that attacks their party. That is a mythological bat, mythical bat, not mythological, mythical bat, and nobody's really sure if it even exists or not. And guess what? It exists. So that was cool. And the other thing I liked, the other thing I was a little bit weary about Li Long at first and the yellowskins things. I was like, all right, are we going to just have like every race and then we're just going to call them, like white skins, and I'm not even going to say the other one, the former football team. So I was a little bit like, okay, but then, you have to say to yourself, is it analogy, is it an allegory, or is it just a fantasy novel? And I feel it's safe to say it's just a fantasy novel. So The Yellowskins are fantastical because everything in the novel is fantastical, and just leave it at that. And then the last thing I'll say about fantasy in general is it's just not my bag in general, right? Like, I don't really like fantasy. And part of the reason I don't like it is the amount of world building. It's sometimes difficult to like wrap your head around what these people are doing. Like, who, it's like I'll be reading a fantasy book and I'll be thinking like, right, but what does he do for a job? Like, he's just, how come there's not like money constantly exchanging hands? Like, I get too caught up in the day to day. So I got to hand it to anybody who writes fantasy books, especially this author, Suyi. I'm so ashamed that I don't know how to pronounce the last name, but I don't. Creating an entire world, the amount of effort that goes into it to come up with the case systems, the different wards and all of that. It's just crazy because I would sit down and try to start doing that, and I would get caught up on like what kind of coins are they using or something like that. Whereas, I think if you're a fantasy writer, that's like probably the funnest part is like, oh yeah, all right, these are going to be the coins. It just naturally comes to you. But for me, an unnatural fantasy reader, I'm always like, yeah, okay, but what's his job? Yeah, and that's probably stupid. Last thing, there was a non-binary character in this book, and they were awesome. Great character, and maybe I should say present tense. I can't remember, but I think they survived. There you go. Now that's a cliffhanger. You got to read the book to find out. But that was just a cool character in general that happened to be non-binary, and I think that like it was cool because the author didn't. I like just, hey, this person's in the book, and that's it. They exist, rather than like, it's not like you bought the book and you were expecting it, or bought the book and if it wasn't in there, you'd be upset. But more like these people are in the world and we should have them in the books. So just put a character in a book and move on. Don't overthink it. And I thought that was really well placed in the book and just nice and natural and good. So yeah, I think that Son of the Storm, good fantasy novel. If you like fantasy, definitely pick it up. I think you'll enjoy it. I personally am not a fantasy person, so I don't know if I'll read book 2 or 3. Because the thing about fantasy books, too, they're thick, They don't run small. So I probably won't be reading books 2 or 3, but that's just because I'm not a fantasy guy. But never say never. I don't know. Maybe I'll check out book 2. When book 2 comes out, I'll check it out. I will check it out. And then if I like book 2, I'll get, I'm going to end up reading the whole series. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. All right. That's going to do it for today. A nice, short, and sweet podcast. Just a little bit of fiction. It's nice. It's easy. That's why we like it. Please subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, whatever you got. Podbean. The music is by The Keep Running. Check him out. He's on SoundCloud. Everything's in the show notes. If you want to read some stuff I wrote, just go to the show notes. It's there. And yeah, next time we're here, probably going to do Jonathon Abrams' hip-hop book because it came out in the last 2 weeks. It's a history of hip-hop. I just picked it up from the library. Although it's a book I would like to own, but I have too many books right now. So just picked it up from the library. Gonna give it a read. Pretty excited about that. So yeah, let's just book that in. Jonathon Abrams. Can't even remember the name of the book. I just as soon as I walked in the library, I saw it sitting there and I said, okay, that's it. We're reading that. So that'll be the next time I see you, or you hear from me, because I don't actually see you, but you know what I mean. So until then, stay safe, stay black, and keep reading. Also, happy Thanksgiving.
This time enough at last. That's not fair. That's not fair at all. There was time now. There was all the time I needed. That's not fair. That's not fair.